Welcome to Heretical Heathenry. I'm your host, Robert Knox, and today we're talking about Blót, specifically why we actually do it. So we just came through Yule, and I did my Blót outside in, nice -9 degree weather in Wisconsin. It was quick, because it had to be. I made my offerings, said what needed saying. I got back inside before my fingers fell off. And honestly, that's fine. That's real. But it got me thinking about what we're actually doing when we blót, beyond this is just what heathens do. So today I want to take you through a couple of different levels of understanding, 3 layers if you will. We'll start with the most accessible. Our ancestors did it, so we do it. Then we'll move into the reciprocal understanding, the idea of gift giving between humans and gods. And finally we'll get into something deeper, something more philosophical with Platonic theurgy, and the idea that blót is participation in the ongoing process of creation itself. By the end, I hope you'll have a richer understanding of why this practice matters, and maybe see your own blóts a little differently. So let's start at the beginning. Well, Uber accent there, and I'm keeping it in. The most straightforward answer to why we blót is because our ancestors did it. Now, this is the Reconstructionist argument, and it's a legitimate starting point. We have evidence that give us insight into how early heathens may have practiced. There are a few sagas, such as the Yngling saga, that give us specific details about blót. That said, these accounts were written down after Christianization, and so we have to remember to read them critically. In addition to sagas, we have archaeological evidence, ritual sites, remains of animal bones in specific contexts, votive offerings in bogs and springs. We have place names that reference sacred spaces, and we have Adam of Bremen writing about the Temple of Uppsala, even if his account is probably a little exaggerated. The practice of blót, of ritual sacrifice and offering, is clearly attested in the historical record. Our pre-Christian Germanic ancestors made offerings to their gods. They sacrificed animals. They shared ritual meals. They poured out ale and mead. They even, and this is controversial, prayed to their gods. Ooh. This happened, it's not made up, and it's not a Jewish conspiracy. There's a few terminally online people that'll get that joke. There's something meaningful about cultural continuity. When we blót, we're connecting ourselves to a chain of practice that extends back centuries, even if that chain was severed. We're saying, this matters to us now, because it mattered to them then. We're honoring our ancestors, not just in theory, but by doing what they did, reviving a fire from the few embers we have. For people starting out in heathenry, it's a foundation. And for the average person, it's absolutely enough. You don't need a complex understanding of theology to participate. You just need to know, this is what heathens do. We make offerings. We honor the gods and spirits of our ancestors. We maintain the old ways, participating in a pattern of being that was central to our forebears. And this is probably just psychologically beneficial. The colonization of European religions isn't merely a matter of just switching out gods whom one prays to. It's a deep psychological battle, one that leaves a scar. A new religion comes in, causing a fracture deep in the psyche of a people, and like all moments of trauma, those moments of trauma get regulated to the depths. Think about what it means to have your sacred practice, your cosmology, your entire framework for understanding reality stripped away. Not gradually, not through honest intellectual conversation, but through force, political pressure, and centuries of systematic erasure. The old gods become demons. The sacred sites get churches built on top of them. The practices that connected your ancestors to the divine become witchcraft. They become heresy. They become something to be ashamed of. That just doesn't change what people believe in. It changes how they relate to themselves, to their land, and to their dead. There's a reason why so many people who find their way to heathenry describe it as a coming home. Not just discovering something new, but remembering something old. Something that was always there, buried under centuries of suppression, just waiting. Jung would probably call it the collective unconscious doing its work. These patterns, these archetypal structures that shaped European peoples for millennia, they don't just vanish because someone burned the temples. They go underground. They get preserved in folklore, in fairy tales, in folk magic, in the names of our days of the week. They persist because they're woven into something deeper than the conscious belief. So when someone picks up a hammer, pours out their first offering, and says, "This feels right," that feeling is real, and it's not just nostalgia. It's not just a fantasy. It's a recognition. The psyche is remembering a pattern that it's always been meant to inhabit. And that's why our ancestors did it is a legitimate starting point. It's not just a historical argument. It's a psychological homecoming. The practice itself begins the healing. But the healing is just that. It's a beginning, it's not an ending. It's an invitation. It's a chance to step into something bigger. Once you've come home, you start asking questions. You start wanting to understand not just what your ancestors did, but why. What did they believe was actually happening when they made those offerings? Maybe you're curious about this too. What did they actually think was going on? They weren't just doing this out of habit. Blót meant something to them. It accomplished something in their understanding of how the world worked. So what was that something? That brings us to our second layer. The gift economy. The second way to understand Blót is through reciprocity. Gabo, a gift for a gift. Blót establishes and maintains relationships. Not dominion, not submission. Relationship. A living exchange between human and God, held together by mutual gifting. This isn't something we have to infer. It's plainly stated in the sources. In the Havamal, again and again, we see stanzas that highlight the importance of gift giving. A gift always looks for a recompense. Not because the gods are accountants trying to balance the budget, although that's a funny image. They're beings in some sense. Beings we've created bonds with, and bonds formed want to remain alive. The foundation of Norse society seemingly rested on this principle. A gift economy. Not simply money moving hands, but more than that, its meaning. Gifts were how bonds were forged, how obligations were woven, how order itself was sustained. And it's something we've personally lost as a culture. And it wasn't cynical. A gift wasn't given with an expectation, and it wasn't a bribe. It was a declaration, an acknowledgement of shared fate. To give was to say, I see you, I recognize you, I enter into relation with you. And once that bond was formed, it carried weight, memory, expectation, and responsibility. You were no longer alone, you were connected. So when we blót, when we pour out mead, when we offer bread or meat, when we give our time, attention, and devotion, we're entering into that same kind of relationship with the gods. We're not bribing them. We're not treating them like a cosmic vending machine where you put in an offering and get out a favor. We're saying, I acknowledge you. I honor you. I give to you freely, and I trust that you will give back in your own way, in your own time. This is how relationships work. They're not merely transactions. Blót just isn't about getting stuff. It's about maintaining right relationship. It's about being part of a community that includes not just other human beings, but gods and spirits and ancestors. It's about recognizing that we don't exist in isolation. We're embedded in a web of relationships that constantly requires tending. Oh, think about it this way. You don't need to give your friends gifts only when you need something from them. You give them gifts because you care about the relationship. Maintaining those bonds matters. Giving is part of what it means to be in a community. Same thing with Blót. We give because the relationship matters. We give because it's right to honor the powers that shape our lives. We give because of reciprocity. Gabo, a gift for a gift. Honor for honor. It's our duty to maintain that gift cycle. Now, this is already deeper than our ancestors did it. And this is starting to get a little closer to my view on the theological significance of Blót. And I'm going to push it even further into that direction because I personally just find this far more interesting. With that said, let's move on to layer 3, the Platonic theurgy, and the participation in creation. Alright, bear with me here. We're going to get a little more philosophical, but I promise this will also connect back to the freezing cold Yule bloat that I mentioned at the start. In Platonic philosophy, especially in its later, more mystical forms, there's an idea that reality flows out from a divine source, and in some deep sense longs to return to it. The language often used is that of emanation and return. The basic idea is everything that exists emanates from the one, the source, the divine ground of being. Reality flows outward like a light from the sun, not because the sun chooses to shine, but because shining is just what it is, what it does. And there's a corresponding movement back, at least for souls, a return toward the source. Creation isn't a one-time event locked in the distant past. It's an ongoing process, maybe even a cosmic breathing in and breathing out. Or in this case, breathing out and breathing back in. Scratch that, reverse it. Now, in the Platonic tradition, there's a practice that Iamblichus called theurgic, literally God working, but it's not about commanding or trying to control divine powers. It's about union. Theurgy is the work of joining oneself to the gods by participating in the same divine activity that sustains the cosmos. It's a long string of words. For the theurgist, one cannot reach the gods through abstract belief alone or through intellectual assent. We require action. It is through this embodied practice that we align the human soul with the gods and participate in the act of creation. And here's where it connects to Blót. When we make offerings, we take something from the material world and dedicate it to the gods. Depending on the person, this could be as simple as pouring out a libation, burning goods, or something as complicated as sacrificing an animal. Though the particulars may change, the underlying structure remains. We take unity, such as food offerings, and break it down into multiplicity. Our souls are elevated as we play out the drama of creation. And this process is sometimes called henosis, or union. Not union in the sense of losing yourself and having your personality destroyed, that ego death that all the crystal hippies talk about. It's more like a tuning fork. It's union in the sense of participating in that same activity. When we sacrifice, we're doing what the gods do. Reality emanates from the one into multiplicity. The divine source remains unified while creation flows outward, and we're enacting that same pattern on the human scale, taking unity, let's say an animal sacrifice, and breaking it down into sacred multiplicity. And at that moment of perfect participation, we're not separated from the divine. We're in harmony with it, again, like a tuning fork, moving with it, part of that same creative flow. Additionally, the theurgists thought the world was filled with the divine. There was a God in all things, and pieces of them, divine signatures, were everywhere the fire's eyes blaze. What the theurgists called sunthemata. Some signatures correspond to specific gods. For instance, a Yule bloat may have portions dedicated to Odin, and maybe to Sol. So we seek out items bearing their signatures, and offer those items specifically, allowing us to move further into union with those divine powers. So Blót isn't just giving to get. It's not even maintaining relationships, although it is. It's participating in the fundamental creative process of the cosmos, aligning our souls with the gods by enacting their pattern, by being in union with them. Reality isn't static. Weird is constantly being woven. The Norns just aren't reading fate, they're continually shaping it. And reality in some sense is participatory. When we blót, we're participating in that weaving. We're adding our thread to the pattern through the right offerings. Bearing the right divine structures, we align ourselves with specific powers and participate in their creative activity. We're not passive recipients of fate. We're active participants in its creation. Alright, bringing it together. Let's bring this back down to Earth. Back to that 9-degree Yule bloat. On the first level, Our ancestors did it. I was continuing a practice that goes back centuries. I was doing what heathens do. On the second level, the reciprocal gift giving, I was honoring the gods and ancestors, maintaining right relationship, participating in that gift economy that binds our community together across time and space. On the third level, a theurgic participation, I was consciously engaging with the ongoing processes of creation itself. I was in unity with the gods. Even for just a few cold minutes, I aligned myself with the cosmic flow of emanation and return. I was making the ordinary sacred and participating in weird. And nothing about these levels contradict each other. They're not competing explanations. They're just layers of meaning that all work together. You can bloat because your ancestors did it. That's real, and that matters. You can bloat to maintain relationships with gods and spirits. That's real too. And you can bloat as a theurgic act, as a participation in the divine creative process. That's also real. The beauty is that all three can be true at once. A single act can carry multiple layers of meaning. That's what makes ritual powerful, and that's what makes bloat more than just going through the motions. So what does this actually change in practice? Well, for one thing, it means the elaborate public bloat and the quick backyard offering in freezing weather are both valid. And I hate that word. Both are participating in the same cosmic processes. The gods don't need lengthy rituals to prove your devotion. They need your sincerity, your intentionality, and your conscious participation. I've been stumbling over my words a lot in this episode, and I'm leaving most of it in. It means you don't have to stress about doing it right, according to some perfect reconstructionist formula. Because while historical precedent matters, that first layer is real. The point isn't historical accuracy for its own sake. The point is participating in something larger than yourself. And the history provides a useful map for that territory. But don't get stuck there. And this means even that if you're agnostic about whether or not the gods exist as literal supernatural beings, bloat can still be meaningful. Because either way, you're still participating in that process. You're consciously engaging with the sacred dimension of reality. You're aligning yourself with the flow of existence itself. Oh, that is a horrible way to phrase it. That's not nothing. That's profound. So why do we bloat? Because our ancestors did it. And that continuity matters. Because gift giving creates and maintains relationships. And we are in relationship with higher powers than ourselves. And because we are participants in the ongoing creation of reality, we want unity with the gods, and bloat is how we get there. All three at once, layers of meaning in a single act. Next time you make an offering, whether it's elaborate or simple, whether it's in perfect weather or in freezing weather, remember that. You're not just following a tradition. You're not just maintaining relationships. You're participating in the weaving of weird itself. You're seeking to unify yourself with that which lies above. Head back to the one. You're making the sacred real in the world, and that's why we bloat. Thanks for listening to Heretical Heathenry. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to support the podcast, you know where to find me. Until next time, everyone, keep it heretical.